Hey everyone, welcome to today's video where we're going to talk about the difference between a software implementation consultant and a Big Four consultant. Stay tuned to the very end. I got my best tips and tricks there for you. My name is Nick Fuller. On this channel, we talk about software, we talk about SaaS, entrepreneurship, high performance, and everything else in between. If you like this kind of content, give me a like, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. It really helps me out on this channel here. Perfect. So let's get started. So what is the difference between a software consultant and a Big Four consultant? We'll have a few different items that we'll run through here today. A little background on me that makes me qualified to talk about this. I started my career out of college at Accenture. At Accenture, I was part of their operations consulting group. Within that, I spent time a year out in Utah on a Salesforce implementation project. I spent a few years doing ServiceNow work, mostly on the process side. So not being the technical person, but thinking, how should this work? What do we need to do internally? What's the change management look like internally for this customer, for this software implementation to be effective and adaptive, as well as getting into the nitty-gritty requirements. What does this field need to do? What does this need to look like? So I have seen what this looks like from the big consulting world side, and then have spent the last 4.5 years at America's fastest growing software startup. The first 3.5 years building their software implementation team. So started as an implementation consultant, from there a lead, eventually being a manager, team of 50 implementation consultants, helping customers adapt and use things like privacy management software. So I've been able to see both sides of the house. What does it look like? What are the different value propositions there? I'll start off and say, at my core, I am not a software consultant. At my core, I don't care about software. I care about the results that it provides. How do we help companies? How do we think about the process? How do we, in practice, operationally, make things happen? Software is a part of that, and so that's how I kind of fell into this world here. So when we think about working as a software consultant, and I have my notes down here, so you'll see me checking those, what does that look like? So as a working for a software company, as you can expect, you're going to have a narrow view on the kind of products and services that you're able to work on, rather than a big consulting company where you might bounce around between projects, different software platforms. They try to be as agnostic as possible when it comes to servicing their clients and their recommendations. So with that, you're going to be focused, if you work for a software company, on just those products and services. How do we implement those? How do we get really good at this specific solution? Really get into the nooks and cranny of the platform itself. At a big company, you're probably going to bring on to the project, unless that's your career path, someone who specializes in the solution, that helps you out, that really understands the nooks and crannies, tell you what's possible. They still work for your consulting group, but able to give those best practices and advice on supporting that overall services work that you're providing. The next big difference between working for a software company versus a big consulting company is, if you work for the software company, especially if you get in early on in that process, you're able to really influence the roadmap of the product itself. And what I mean by the roadmap is, what future development, what future features is the company going to release? You're able to have a direct impact on that. You're working day to day closely with the customers, able to understand what gaps are, what is the market saying, what do we really need to do to improve the product, and relay that back directly to your friends at the company who are hopefully product managers, and able to influence what needs to be built next. Now, if you work for a big consulting company, you're not really going to have that influence, direct contact. You may, throughout your career, build some of those relationships internally, but ultimately, you're dealing with the product as is, and maybe having to escalate to your partner contact internally at the company, but you're not going to have as great of influence on what needs to be built, what's to come here. So the next Big difference between working for a software company versus a big consulting company is just the variety of projects that you're going to be involved in. So at a software company, it's going to be very repeatable. Now, there's going to be a lot of challenges, a lot of nuance into what you're doing, but ultimately, you're going to get good at kind of what that product and services looks like. And then in your career, you're able to look at things like escalations. How do we manage this? How do we manage that? Which I'll talk about kind of career progression there separately. But separate from that is the big consulting company where you're going to get a wide variety of experiences, never really getting too deep into anything until you grow in your career at a big consulting company, when you really get forced to specialize in what that looks like. So as part of that, kind of that career progression is the next area that's a big difference. So within a software company, your career progression is you're really going to look at you're starting off very specialized, maybe within a specific product. Maybe you're starting on the support team within a product, and from there growing into a customer facing role, getting that on-site experience, still very specialized into that solution, and then maybe expanding out into other solutions and growing what you're seeing within that field. And typically there's a split in your career at a software company where you're looking at, do I want to be a people manager, or do I want to stay focused and be a principal consultant who's just super deep in the product, kind of architect role within the implementation space. I was very much a people manager. That's what I enjoy to do, but have also kind of been able to play that architect role just based on the size of the company. When I joined, we wore a lot of different hats, early stage startups. Now, with that, in software, you really start specialized and then work your way. When you think about a big consulting company, you actually are very generalist. You're going to see a lot of variety. You're going to work in a lot of different roles in these companies, and every project you'll do something different. So you're going to get a taste of this, taste of that, and it's going to be a great experience, but you're not going to be good at any one thing, if that makes sense. So you're going to be a very strong generalist. And then as you grow in your career, you're actually going to start to specialize in your career to make those advancements. So different than the software side where you start specialist and then you become more of a generalist. In a big consulting company, you're going to start very generalist because no one knows what you're good at, what do you want to do, and then eventually start to specialize. And then as you move up, you actually become a little more of a generalist, running the accounts, running the services itself. So pros and cons depending on what you like. Maybe a little more technical background. You like that where you can master something really well and then grow from there. Or if you're like me, coming out of college, you didn't know what the heck you wanted to do, that generalist experience can be very rewarding for you. I'd say the next area is just kind of the size of your network, and how close you're able to build those relationships. So within a software company, you have a team that you're working with regularly. These are your colleagues. You sit together. Maybe you're always on projects together, or you're running projects by yourself, and folks are helping you out. But it's always a very specific team. Most software companies aren't 100,000 people. Salesforces of the world, those are exceptions when it comes to typical software careers. So you're able to build that tight knit connection there, and you're working for the company itself. So you see the progress and growth of that organization. Now, opposed to that is the big consulting side. When you look at really these multi-100,000 employee-based companies. For me, Accenture was 400,000 people by the time I left. It was 500,000 people. That was in 2017. So just so many people. And it's really hard to make a lot of those kind of long-lasting connections because you're always on the road. Every few months, you're starting a new project team. So those close connections are hard to make, but you make a ton more connections. So quantity versus quality, there's debates for either of those. But that's a big difference depending on who you want to be, what kind of personality you have, Are you able to quickly make friends? Is that a skill you want to acquire? So there's just kind of differences between the two of working for a software company on the services side versus the big consulting world there. So I think with that, we covered a lot of different areas, right? So in summary, software versus big consulting, you're going to be very product specific in software, or in big consulting, you're going to be more of a generalist. You're going to have a lot of different variety in what you're seeing and what you're doing. If you work for the software company itself, you're going to have really direct influence on the roadmap. You're going to know product managers. You're going to see how software gets built. You're going to see, how the sausage gets made. Very exciting to be part of that. Versus in a big consulting company, if you are in a software role, probably it's going to be more established products and services, things like SAP, which are boring as heck. But you're not going to be able to have that big of an influence and not be able to manage those escalations or issues, because that's on the company, the software company, to solve for it. Difference between repeatability, every software implementation relatively the same. It's just going to be kind of what you do differently in your career path, versus big consulting. Every project's could be very different because the wide variety of work that big consulting companies sell, that you're able to be part of there. And so I think that really summarizes a lot of the big differences here. If you've worked for either a software company or a big consulting company, let me know what I missed. I'm sure there's a ton of differences that I missed as well. If you like this kind of content, please give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe, leave a comment below. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. Let's network. Check out my personal blog at nickfuller.com. Would love to stay in touch. Love to grow this network, be part of this community here. And with that, until the next video, stay good. We'll see you soon. Thanks.